There's no doubt that young men are going through a crisis today. A crisis of identity, a crisis fighting depression, a crisis looking for the outside world to fulfill their inside world. Today, I'm going to take a look at this clip from Andrew Huberman being interviewed by Shawn when they talk about why the young men of today's culture are going through this challenge and how you could be either part of the problem or part of the solution. Let's begin.
One thing I'm increasingly concerned about, because it's the experience I know, I'm concerned about mental health for everybody, frankly, but I'm very concerned about the suicide rates and depression rates of young men in the United States and elsewhere. But we have a serious, serious crisis of identity that people are starting to talk about. But even the mere mention of it, it sounds like, oh no, they're all going to rally together and do bad things. No, these young guys are so confused about whether or not they have any worth in the world or how to express their generative drive in positive ways. I think most of it starts with lack of, I'm just going to say it, of a strong, in the right sense of the word, paternal figure.
That's the whole point of why these young men are going through a crisis. A book that I recommend every single one of my clients to read is The Boy Crisis. If you're a father, you have to read this book. The Boy Crisis talks about the lack of father figure in young men in today's culture. Because the reason that most young men are lost right now is because they don't have a strong father figure telling them between right or wrong. Because most men right now are weak. Most men become what I call sedated warriors. Yeah, congratulations. You conquer your business, you conquer your career, you conquer the outside game, but you fail on conquering the inside game. So that's why young men are looking at their fathers right now and say, shit, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to have the job that he has. I don't want to have the pressure. I don't want to have the stress. Why? Because they don't want to have our lifestyle. Because we sold them that success means being an absent father. Success means going chasing after the money instead of being at home. Success means not being able to show our emotions.
I've been reading this book that was suggested to me by another team guy. What is it with you guys? That is it's somewhat of a controversial book, but if I could, the book is called Iron John. Have you read that book by Robert Bly? Very powerful book about boys and men's relationships to themselves. And it's a little outdated on certain dimensions, but having grown up in a, home where my dad lived separately and this whole thing, I think, it really struck a chord with me. But, there's one passage, can I just read it? It's a very brief quote. So Bly said, and I don't know if he's saying it for himself or if he's quoting someone else, but he said, the whole of the remote father leaves a gap in the boy's life that demons can enter through. And that just hit me like square everywhere. And I was like, that's right. Like for every bad thing that's come to me, through me, out of me, that I regret, that I wish I had done differently, the challenges that I wish I had chosen differently, I'm not blaming my dad. That's not what this is about. But I think that we are in a point now in the evolution of this country. I do believe it's an evolution, not a devolution. I'm an optimist, where we don't know who to look to. There's a lack of either an internal or an external paternal model that helps us discern between really not good road, so not good road, okay road, pretty good, and best road.
Man, that's deep. Imagine a hole where demons are entering into your son's lives. See, the demon is constantly whispering in your son's ear that he's not enough. He's constantly whispering all the things that he should do. Or in the other ear, it could be the father, reminding him of who he is. I see this all the time where fathers are constantly telling their sons what to do, but they're not being the example. Because that's what you constantly used to doing. Running our businesses, telling people what to do. But at home, you have to be the example. If you want him to work out, you have to work out. If you want him to respect women, you have to respect your wife. If you want him to be a good employee, you have to be the best employee, the best boss. If you as a father don't take your time to protect your son, to guard your son, to train your son, to teach your son, and to whisper in your son's ear that he is enough, that he's more than enough, that he is loved.
That we learn that in part through trial and error, but we also learn that in part by being told what to do at key moments. And I look out on the landscape of podcasts, right? You, Joe, Lex, Jocko. I look at figures like Goggins, Andy Stumpf, right? There seem to be a lot of team guys in the mix, but there are others too, right? Chad Wright, Rich Roll, right? Jay Shetty. I don't want to like paint this picture that it's just one kind of archetype, right? And what I see is a lot of, certainly female audience, mine is certainly very, very much 50-50, but I hear from these young guys, and even guys my own age or older, like we've sort of drifted away from this idea that there's a standard kind of set of protocols, dare I say, to follow to get yourself through the wickets to becoming a solid person inside and out. And there's no excuse making, right? But if I look at the mental health crisis among men in this country and women, but here we're focusing on men, I think that we've had, even in homes where fathers were there, sometimes they were absent because of substance abuse. I think sometimes they were absent because they were absent. And I think sometimes they were there and are really terrific fathers. And I got friends like this who were amazing dads, amazing kids, to boys and girls who are now. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I am very grateful for my experiences, and I'm very grateful to have shored things up with my dad.
One of the things that I see as coaching men is that we think that as long as we provide is enough. As long as we give them everything. I see a lot of men giving their kids everything, cars, money, they pay for schools, but at the end, they were not there for them when they needed them the most. See, that's why I think boys have a crisis, because they don't know who to turn to. They don't want to disappoint their dads because they can't even talk to their dads. We're so disconnected that we're constantly just blaming the youth. So one of the main things that I teach my men to do is to spend quality time with their kids. I remember when my kids were growing up, I knew that my kids were not going to be young forever. So as busy as I was, every single day I used to come home, hour of power was the game. I give them 1 hour full of my attention so they could actually do whatever they want. We'll play, we'll read books, we'll watch a movie, whatever it is what they want to do. And with my son, once he was old enough to come to the office, I brought him into the office, and he used to work with me side by side in my real estate company since he was like 6 years old. I brought him into the office. I brought him into the environment because I wanted him to see what his dad was doing. Quality time. Most men, after the office, what do? They go to the bar or they watch a game. Like, it's bullshit that you don't have enough time. It's bullshit that you don't have, that your kid doesn't want to connect with you. I remember I was telling my son, if you want to get paid, you have to come work with daddy. So create leverage for your son in order for him to want to be around you. It's bullshit that you don't have time. Make time. Your kids right now need a father figure. They need to see somebody that's doing something. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's why I appreciate, Andrew talking about this, because sometimes we blame our dads because they're conditioned us to be the fathers that we are right now. But instead of looking at all the wrong things that they did, what are some of the things that your father taught you that you could actually teach your son? There's so many lessons that I can get from my dad and so many wrong things that he did as well, but I choose to look at the things that were right. I choose to look at the things that he taught me that I could pass on to my son.
Whatever mistakes I've made, I own as my own. That's part of being a grown man. But I do believe that quote. I think when we're young, when we're 5, 10, 15 years old, 20 years old, if there isn't somebody there to like set us straight, or that we haven't internalized the message of what's the right thing to do, that we drift. And that to me is where the higher power piece and relationship to God and looking to and asking for guidance there can sometimes support that as well. Because I'm not trying to turn this into a sermon. This is just my experience. And we need something outside ourselves that we can look to when we're troubled to help steer us right. And that can be brotherhood and family and friends, but we need more men supporting other men on how to be a good man. And not just looking to the examples of how they've succeeded in business or this and that. Actually, a friend of mine who I consider very, very wise, a woman.
I'm so glad that Andrew's talking about this. The need of a higher power, believing in something bigger than you. See, I believe that every single man, their duty is to grow spiritually, to raise their level of consciousness, so you can help your son raise his level of consciousness. Because if you continue the unconscious behavior, you're just going to continue to repeat the same pattern. Whatever your father taught you, you're going to pass it on to your son unconsciously, and the curse is going to continue to pass on until there is a man in your lineage, there's a man in your family that says, enough is enough. I'm going to tap into a higher power. I'm going to believe in something bigger than me, because if you just believe in yourself, that's just ego. And that's one of the things that I constantly tell my sons, like, don't follow what I'm doing. Follow the principle coming from a higher power, because I'm just a man. I'm going to fall through. I'm going to fail. But see, if you have a higher power, whether it's Jesus, God, or whatever you choose to believe, that's the framework that you have to go through. Are you spiritually connected? Do you believe in something that's bigger than you? Because if you don't believe in something that's bigger than you, a higher power, eventually you're going to drift through life. Another book that I recommend that is called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. You're going to love this book because it talks about the drift, how most men are drifting because of fear. But if you don't have awareness that you're drifting through life, you're always going to be caught by the enemy. And the devil is going to manipulate your thoughts, manipulate your actions, and eventually your kids are going to suffer.
She said, it's kind of weird. You look at all the toys in a toy store. She has a son. And the like boxes of all these toys nowadays are like this warrior walking out from all this destruction behind him. Like he won and he's alone. And I go, really? She goes, yeah, go look. So I was like, all right, I'll go look. And I looked up some toys. And it's true. There isn't a picture of like being in community or being with family, or we've created this model of like this like lone wolf and triumph thing.
Interesting.
That I think she's onto something. I don't think it's the full picture. But I have to say, what you have, marriage, kids, thriving business, you got your history in the teams and history of CIA, you're transmuting any pain that you have, as far as I can tell, into goodness for the world. Like, thank you. I mean, you're playing a fatherly role to millions of people. And I do believe that whether or not it's intentional or inadvertent, I think that's what a lot of the podcast community and inventors like Elon and, Zuck did his version of it. Here I'm talking about men, and yeah, I know there are women that do this too. I get that. From Silicon Valley, I get it. They do amazing work too. But here we're talking about examples of men for other men and boys. And I think this lone warrior thing I don't think it's going to work. And I'm just lucky that the brotherhood I was in included enough healthy people to help pull me through. I mean, there's no need to get into it, but that Jim Thiebaud guy pulled me out multiple times on other things later, helped me. He didn't pull me out. He held me accountable.
The whole reason that most young men are going through a crisis because they don't have a brotherhood of men that are guiding them to the next level, that guide them to the rite of passage. I wrote a book called The King's Code, and I talk about every single man is going to go through the peasant stage, the warrior stage, the sedated warrior stage until they become a king. And exactly what it says, that most men are lone warriors. That lone warrior mentality eventually is going to sabotage your life, your business, your marriage, your connection with God is going to be sabotaged because you're going to feel like you're alone. I believe that when a man feels alone, he's in a tunnel. And when he's in a dark place of the tunnel, he thinks that he's the only one going through this. That's what's going on right now with young men. They're going through this tunnel a lot younger than when we used to go to the tunnel. I went through my tunnel in my mid-30s. Most young men right now are going in the mid-20s into the tunnel of depression, the tunnel of anxiety, the tunnel when they think that the whole world is against them. But what pulls people out of the tunnel is brotherhood. Men who are saying, here's the light. I've been through what you've been through. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to hold you accountable because I'm not going to feel sorry for you. I'm not going to have pity. I'm actually going to tell you that this is the tunnel that's going to shape you and mold you. That's the reason I've been able to help men go through this tunnel by giving them three things: accountability, hold them accountable to a higher standard, association, putting them around other men that have gone through what they've gone through, and most important, an action plan every single day, one step at a time, one day at a time. So my intention for you today, as you watch this video, is to ask yourself, am I being part of the problem or can I be part of the solution? If you're a young man right now, if nobody has told you this, I'm telling you right now, I am proud of you. I'm proud of the fact that you're watching this content. I'm proud of the fact that you're searching, because you're probably part of the 1% of young men right now that is looking to get out of that tunnel. Now, this is not the end. This is the beginning. You have to go through this in order for you to go to the next level. And if you're a father right now watching this, spend time with your kids, but be the example. You could either be part of the problem, or you could be part of the solution. If you want to be part of the solution, get around people that are going to raise your standard. Don't play small. Show up. Don't just provide. Connect. Be present with your family. Be present with your family. Be present with your son. And most important, just know that you're not perfect. You have to look up. You have to look for a higher power that's going to help you, guide you through this journey as a father. If you like this video, make sure you check out this other video right here that talks about how do you know if you're growing as a man. And don't forget to subscribe.